Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of M365 Voice. I'm Antonio Mayo.
I'm Sarah Haase.
I am Mike Magalani.
And today we're going to talk to you about one of the cool new Microsoft Purview features that I'm really loving and starting to talk about and show to customers. And that is data security posture management for AI, which is a mouthful. So we call it DSPM for AI.
Yes.
So say that 3 times fast.
Or try and type it, because the DSPM for AI, it's tough.
Right. So Microsoft announced DSPM for AI last year in all of the flurry of announcements around Microsoft Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot, and trying to provide additional capabilities for customers to control and govern their environment for effective AI usage, so effective usage of tools like Copilot. That's one of the key purposes of DSPM for AI, which I'm going to say because saying the long name is a mouthful. I guess the first thing to share is that there are actually 2 data security posture management tools in Purview. So the way you access either of them is through the Microsoft Purview portal. One is called Data Security Posture Management, which is more of a general tool for assessing and controlling your posture around data security. And then the second one is Data Security Posture Management for AI. So there's kind of 2 flavors of it. So I was going to show that and talk about that, but maybe Mike or Sarah, do you guys have any questions around it at the outset or anything to share on it?
I would say let's get into it and yeah, let's go.
All right. So can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
All right. So I'm in the Microsoft Purview portal. So I'm going to start off here, right? So this is the new Purview UI. The old Purview UI has been deprecated, and this new one is actually really, really nice to work with. You can kind of see the link down here for it to get to that particular interface. That's because this is one of the solutions I last accessed. But if you don't see that link, you can go to the solutions link, and now you see all of the Purview solutions listed here. Right? And you even see some of the related portals outside of Purview around it also. But the one that we're interested in is this one here, DSPM for AI. You can see the other one I mentioned here, Data Security Posture Management, kind of a general version of it, which is still in preview. But DSPM for AI is actually GA.
Okay.
So if we go to this, you can see there's actually a number of capabilities available here through the menu. And there's 3 or 4 key purposes to it. The first is to provide you with recommendations on how you can improve your data security posture for AI usage. So that's one. The second is showing you which AI tools are currently in use in your organization. And not only does it show you Microsoft AI tools like Microsoft Copilot or Microsoft 365 Copilot, it'll also show you a number of other, actually a very large number of other generative AI tools that could be in use, right? The common ones that come to mind are things like ChatGPT, of course, ChatGPT Pro. What are some other ones? Gemini is another popular one from Google. And the idea there is that if your organization has standardized on a particular generative AI tool, because of course the protection of your data is an important topic as part of that, and your users are off using other generative AI tools, your compliance admins, your global admins want to know about it and want to potentially enforce policies on it. And that comes to the third item. So enforcing policies on generative AI is another option here. And then the fourth interesting part of this is data assessments. And these are, let's say, yet another oversharing assessment option in Microsoft 365.
So this is interesting. When you say that this can help you to learn the explorer of what's being used from an AI perspective, that's within the confines of your environment. If someone's using ChatGPT and they're using it on their personal cell phone and then they're you're not going to find that, right? But you're looking at, if you don't have it blocked from a company perspective on one of your either BYOD or a company device, that's what you can find there.
That's correct. That's correct. And where that shows up, so in here, you'll notice we have a link to the Activity Explorer, which is a common tool throughout Purview. And I don't have a ton of data in here. I'm going to get to a point, but here's where you would actually see your AI interactions. So this is the General Activity Explorer. This only goes back 1 month. So I can only go back a month at most, or 30 days, to be honest, at most, in DSPM for AI. So my visibility here is a little bit, let's say, limited.
Can you offload log files to be, or audit logs to be able to go back past that?
You can. So this is actually, all of this data is actually coming from your audit logs. So if you go to the audit feature in Purview, you can go further back depending on what license you have. If you have an E3 license, you can now go back 6 months. If you have an E5 license, you can go back a year. This is going to be specifically tuned to AI interactions here in the DSPM for AI Activity Explorer. To give you an indication of just a little bit of what this looks like, if I come up here to reports, it's going to show us a number of reports that I can scroll through. And these are kind of some simple pre-canned reports. Again, they go back the last 30 days. I don't have a lot of usage here, but you can see right here, I have one usage of Microsoft Copilot Studio. And then if I come over here, I have one usage of Microsoft Copilot. And again, there's not a lot of data in this tenant. This is going to show us enterprise AI apps. So specifically, if I'm using ChatGPT Enterprise, for example, that's going to show up in here, which I'm not using in here. You can see this message here. It might take 24 hours for data to show up in here. Total visits for other AI apps. And if I come down here for data and I see this one, right, I've got, unfortunately, just one interaction with an AI app. If I click on the details here, this does take me to the Activity Explorer. It is, again, going back at most a month. And it's showing me, that there was some sensitive info. A sensitive info type was actually found to be used with a generative AI app. So this is a particular user account used a sensitive information type on February 11th. Here under the AI app, it was with the Microsoft Copilot experience. And it actually tells me what that sensitive info type is, which is it's a custom one that's built in here. And I can see a little bit more info here if there was files that were referenced as part of it as well. Now, this is just one interaction. It's not a lot of data, but generally, this is what your interactions are going to show you. It's going to show you, did a user interact with a generative AI app? And then did users use sensitive data within generative AI apps?
So how do you see this or envision it, Antonio, being used from an organizational perspective? Is this somebody who's hands-on keyboard interacting with DSPM for AI? Is it somebody in the security space? And I know it's different per company, but how do you best envision this in terms of?
So I do think that it's a data protection team that would leverage this in conjunction with an AI team within an organization. So an organization that is interested in deploying AI, having good, productive, well-governed usage of AI in the organization, and a team that's concerned with the protection of their data. It is some combination of that team that would use this. Now, one important aspect of DSPM for AI is that it's just a layer on top of existing Purview features.
Mm-hmm.
So, the data that comes out of here in the reports or in the Activity Explorer is just your audit data. This is just another way to slice and dice your current audit data that's already being captured.
Do you have to turn any of that on, or is it on by default?
This is on by default here. You just have to turn on, you have to make sure auditing is on in your tenant.
Okay.
The other thing you can do here is you can actually enforce policies. These policies are simply DLP policies that could also be configured in your data loss prevention Purview solution page. You could turn on IRM policies that are configured in the IRM policy page, or communication compliance policies that are configured there. So whether I configure a policy in here or whether I configure a policy in those solutions, if the policy involves some aspect of AI, it will show up here. So again, this is just a veneer or a layer on top of the policy solutions that are already there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if I select one of these, it's going to show me a little bit of information about those policies. So for example, Oh,
Yeah, I
go
was
ahead,
going to
Sarah.
ask you to talk about this one. When this one says content labeled restricted, does this mean that you can actually exempt certain content labeled files or emails labeled with a certain sensitivity label?
Correct. So this is the new feature that was, I think it went GA at Ignite last year. I'm not sure if that was the date that it went GA, but this is the DLP policy that lets you restrict data labeled with a certain sensitivity label from Copilot interactions.
Love it. Have you
So
seen that being used at companies? Because I'm interested.
I have actually. I've seen that used at some large FSIs, some large financial organizations, large global financial organizations just recently. So that I know was a big ask from Microsoft, a big ask to Microsoft to have a feature where I could turn off, my secret data not being included in Copilot interactions. So that's what that exact policy is, that one there. And one other nice thing here in DSPM for AI is if I come up to recommendations, there are a number of recommendations that it provides out of the box, right? And these are fairly static recommendations here. If I click on these, so for example, if I want to control unethical behavior in AI, I actually have a one-click experience where I can enable this policy through this here, right? So, this policy here is going to, for the past 30 days, it detected interactions in Copilot containing potentially unethical behavior. This, I think, is a communication compliance policy. I can actually create that policy right from here, and it'll create it in the communication compliance policy solution. So if I click this here, it'll turn on the policy in that page. So I'll see it if I go there, and I'll also see it if I go to the policy page here. So we think of this as one-click policy solutions, which is kind of nice.
Now, who has access to this? And we know that global admins typically have access to pretty much most of Purview. But we know inside Purview also, in some of the solutions, you might need to have an extra role.
Right.
Is this the case here, or global admin have access to it?
So in this one, the global admin does have access to this solution, to most aspects of this solution. And it is the Entra ID roles that control access to this. So for example, compliance admin will also have access to this. Okay. So you don't have to be a global admin. If you want to give someone just reader access to this, they can get to it if they have global reader or if they have security reader as well. So those two also give you capabilities. If you want to, for example, be able to create, to see the insider risk alerts or activity, I believe you need the insider risk roles as well for that. And I can't remember, I don't know if you know this, Mike or Sarah, if the insider risk roles are Entra ID roles. I think they are, but I just don't remember at the top of my head.
Are they the same as the content viewer and content?
No, so those are specialized ones. So it's a good point, Mike. If you do want to get to content itself as you navigate through the Explorer, you're going to need content list viewer or content content viewer. Yeah, and those are Purview roles. Correct. Yeah, great point. Yeah. And then the last capability in here is these data assessments. Now, these data assessments are, in fact, oversharing assessments. And as we've talked about, Cher, there's actually 4 different kinds of oversharing assessments you can now run in M365. This is one of them. Now, the oversharing assessments here, there's default assessments, and then there's custom assessments. For the default assessments to start running, they run once a week. All you have to do is visit this page. Once you visit this page, those default assessments start running once a week. And then you can also create your own custom assessments that focus on specific sites, if you will. Sorry, you were going to say.
No, this is really nice. And it's handy being able to see this. I think that there's a ton of opportunity within DSPM for AI that I think there might be many organizations that just aren't aware of it or aren't using it yet. So
exactly. For example, if we click on one of these reports that was created February 3rd, we're going to see a bunch of information related to potential oversharing that's happening. Now, this is going to be similar to some of the SAM reports, but it is a little bit different. There are some insights in here that I don't think you get in the SAM reports, but I haven't looked in the SAM reports for a little while. It is going to show you your SharePoint site, for example. It's going to tell you what the source is. It's going to tell you the total number of items that it found and the total number of items that were accessed in that site. It's going to tell you the number of times user accessed those items. So, for example, there's 45 items in this site, and they were accessed by 100. They were accessed by users 149 times. How many of those were unique users? So there's 2 users accessing a bunch of items a lot. And the total amount of sensitive data that was found. And unfortunately for my report, there was no sensitive items found.
It's a good thing.
What's that?
That is a good thing, I guess.
I guess so. It shows you the total number of items that it scanned and the total that were unscanned. So that's unscanned is an interesting one, because if you have, for example, Office files that are password protected, Purview is not going to be able to scan that. So those are often files that fail scanning, and those will show up here. And then it also show you how many sharing links that you have. So this one's not a great example because we don't have a lot of sensitive data examples in here, but the main purpose of this oversharing report is to show you information that is not labeled. Information that you should apply sensitivity labels to. That's kind of one of the key purposes of this report here.
Okay.
I like it, and very interesting that all you have to do is go to that page in order to be able to start the basic out of the box.
That's right.
Oversharing reporting.
That's exactly right. And when you create custom reports, right, it's going to let you give the report a name. It's going to pick users to focus the report on, data sources, which is going to be SharePoint sites, and then you can run the report. So if you want to get more of a, let's say, a filtered down view of oversharing on just a specific set of sites, perhaps you have a very large number of sites and you just want to focus on a smaller subset, that custom report allows you to do that.
Nice.
Yeah. So good solution overall. I think that Microsoft has a lot of plans for this. I particularly like the ability to see which generative AI solutions are people using out there. And this actually supports identifying, I think it's my last count was 387 different generative AI solutions that it'll look for. Something I forgot to mention earlier, in order for this to be able to detect if someone is using a generative AI solution, there's 2 things that you need. You need to have the device onboarded for endpoint DLP. So you don't have to have endpoint DLP policy, but you need to be onboarded for it. And sorry, let me back up. In order to detect simply detect if someone is using a third-party AI solution or any AI solution, you don't need it onboarded for endpoint DLP. But you do need the Purview browser add-in deployed to desktops for Edge and for Chrome, and there's one for Firefox as well. So as long as you have that Purview browser add-in deployed to your devices, the detection of generative AI solutions is going to happen, and you're going to see that in the results here. If you want to then enforce a policy to stop usage of, let's say, ChatGPT or other generative AI solutions, then you need the device onboarded for endpoint DLP, and then you can enforce policies like that.
Interesting.
Right.
Love it.
But quick overview of DSPM for AI. I think Microsoft has a lot of plans for it, and I think we'll see a lot of new features getting added to it as people continue to improve their data security posture and roll out AI solutions.
All right. And it is time to do our MVP news or MVP shout out. In this episode, we are picking Tom Daly from New Jersey, New York. He has a couple of things for us. One is a new feature, new updates on the Community Days website. So you go to communitydays.org. There is this new feature for the leaderboard if you are a speaker. He pulls this information automatically from 2 platforms, from Sessionize and Run Events. And there is this algorithm, and it basically shows you where you stand on the speaker board. You can turn that off as well. If you can turn that feature off, you don't want to be on the speaker board as well. So I like this feature. That's pretty cool. And the
It
second
is, and I
one,
see people posting on LinkedIn about it.
Yeah.
Pretty frequently. It's cool to be able to see yourself, your name in lights, as it were,
Yeah.
as a speaker.
Yeah.
We like that.
and people are proud of it, which is
Mhm.
good to do.
It's nice.
And he also announced the MC65 New York City. It is July 25th, like every year. He's been doing it for so many years, and it's always the last weekend of July.
Yeah.
So July 25th, MC65 New York City. It's a lovely city, lovely event. I always be there.
I have been at the New York City event twice. I haven't made it in a few years. I'm going to miss it this time too. I'll be on a family holiday, which is a good thing. But yeah, I will miss it this time. But Mike, you're there every year, I think.
Yes, I like New York City. I will submit again this year, but yes, I would love to be there.
I was there 3 times before COVID and have not been back since COVID. But it's always a fun event. It's in the Microsoft New York Times Square office, which is a great location. Great space. Tom and his team put on a great event there.
They do, and it's a beautiful office.
Yeah. Beautiful office, multiple stories. They do amazing job organizing it. Very well organized. An event not to miss.
Yay. I love the MVP news segment that we're going to start doing. So, yeah, you never know who we're going to talk about.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Anton.